As the labor unions and the Nigerian masses continue to groan over federal government's decision to increase electricity tariff, is there a justification for this? Welcome to Question Time. I'm Benga Ashiru. From past administrations, Nigerians continue to wait in frustration for stable supply of power, with many broken promises coming from the federal government, with nothing to show for it. This time around, the federal government is proposing another hike as part of its power reform agenda. In trying to find answers to these problems, Channels TV decided to visit the largest generating power station in Nigeria, Egbe Power Station. It currently generates 1,100 megawatts of electricity, which should be sufficient for its target areas. Unfortunately, due to the national grid system, power may not go directly to its target areas. We met with the chairman of the Egbe Power Station, Mr. Kola Adeshino. He says Egbe Power Station has concluded plans to increase its generating capacity with over 2,000 megawatts by 2019. Mr. Kola Adeshino, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Question Time. Now, Egbe is the largest power generating station in the country, and many still wonder why power is yet to get to the consumers, and so much controversy over the installed capacity and the generating capacity. So could you put things into proper perspective?
Okay, impact first and foremost is naturally incremental in nature. If you start out with the history of Egbe, which was constructed over a 3-year period, culminating in 1,320 megawatt installed capacity, up until the time when we took over the asset in 2013, when it was generating between 380 and 400 megawatts. And currently, it's doing 1,100 megawatts of electricity into the system. Now, if you do a comparative analysis of the output of this power plant, you will see that actually we've really geometrically improved in the availability and supply of electricity out of this plant to the system. The last unit, which is 220 megawatts, is expected to come on stream in another 3 weeks or 4 weeks from now. But for the fact that we're having issues regarding sourcing of parts and other critical items required to get the unit running, we would have been doing 1,320 megawatts as of today.
How long will it take you to develop the second phase of the plants?
The new plant unit we're conceiving of, it's a 1,350 megawatt combined cycle power plant. And what this implies in terms of efficiency, unlike what is currently available, is that will be far more efficient in terms of use of gas than the current capacity we're deploying to the system. This one is doing about 32%. When we go combined cycle, we'll be doing about 50% of efficiency. So invariably, we're going to be using less gas for the available capacity that we're going to be deploying in the future. So we'll be doing in another 4 years, 2,670 megawatts.
You still have not explained the concept of this introduction of the combined cycle technology.
Okay, when you talk of generation of electricity, the key point that we all need to understand in terms of processes in the value chain are the following. First, you start with gas. Before you even embark on gas the development for power generation, you have to do what you call the environmental social impact risk analysis of the location itself, whether it is fit to take power and deploy into the system in a safe and qualitative manner that will not in any way jeopardize the environment. So all that needs to happen. You're going to be doing what we call the front-end engineering design as well, which is more or less the plan of where the plant is going to be, all the appurtenances in terms of the pipeline infrastructure, in terms of the transmission lines and the rest of them that would ensure that that power is readily available to the consumers ultimately. These are things that normally will go on. Now, with regards to gas itself, whether it's simple cycle or combined cycle, the quantum of gas that we use here today is about 394 million scoff of gas per day. Now, if it were to be a combined cycle power plant, we probably will require just about 250 million scoff per day. Invariably, we'll be using less gas to produce more power if we use newer technologies in generating electricity. That's where we're going ultimately, which is where and when we'll get to 2,670 megawatts I told you about earlier.
Is the capital available? And tell us more about this new technology.
Well, in terms of capital availability, that's a wrong approach to assessing needs and how those needs are to be met. Oftentimes, when people do estimation of how businesses crystallize into success, they always forget the starting point. The starting point is there a need for those particular products? Nigeria today is generating averagely 4,500, 4,700 megawatts. We did about 5,000 2 weeks ago. Now, with a population of 170 million people, now you take a trip down to South Africa, and you'll see that they're generating 49,000 megawatts of electricity for a population of just about 50 million to 60 million or so. So we're far, far way behind. Industries are not here as they are in South Africa. The mining sector in South Africa is heavy. Invariably, the need for electricity is higher than that of Nigeria. So if we truly want to industrialize, it invariably means that the electricity that needs to push that industrialization agenda needs to be there. And if it's not there, invariably the economy suffers. If the economy suffers, the people suffer. When the people suffer, there's no job and there's poverty in the land. So those are the things that you need to put into consideration before talking about capital. Now, once that need is there and there's a gap, capital naturally loves gap. Capital is always interested in risk. Capital is equally interested in growth. Capital is interested in profit. So wherever there are needs to be met in any system or society, capital naturally gravitates to those needs. So in terms of capital availability, there is capital. Now, whether the environment is now able to push that agenda through is a different ballgame, which is where government comes in. Now, the role of government is to create an enabling environment to ensure that people that want to put in capital have a high degree of certainty that that capital will return back to them with a profit, ultimately. Once this is in place, you can be readily assured of investment in any sector that presents such an opportunity.
You can also join in this conversation by sending your comments on our various social media platforms. They are showing on your screen. Coming up on Question Time. What are the benefits of the introduced combined cycle technology for power generation? Find out from the chairman of Egbein Power Station after the break. Don't go away.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, our guest on this episode of Question Time is the chairman of the Egbein Power Station, Mr. Kola Adeshino. Don't go away. You still have not explained the details about this new technology being introduced, the combined cycle technology.
Yeah, the technology involved is what we call the combined cycle technology, which is to say that the availability of power will be higher, which says that the resources needed to generate electricity will be lower and there will be stability in the system. The most critical component in supply of electricity from a generation point of view is gas. The quantum of gas resources that will be used for a combined cycle power plant is lower than a simple or any thermal plant or a steam turbine you can find anywhere in the world.
Nigerians are a bit wary about the whole production chain and generating chain and installation because you would recall that during the previous administration there were a lot of fears about the Procurement Act and also the process of shipping in the turbines. How sure are you that you've done a foolproof plan of this process of installation and there will be no hitches by the time you kick off?
Now, what I'm talking about in terms of technology is that the combined cycle power plant is a higher technology that brings along with it better quality, cheaper cost, ultimately, and better prices to everybody. It is easier for us to maintain a combined cycle power plant. It's easier for us to get feedstock for a combined cycle power plant. And ultimately, that simply means it's cheaper in terms of tariff to the customer ultimately.
Nigerians are still wary about some policy somersaults in the process of providing electricity to the consumers. You would recall during the previous administration that they talked about the challenge of procurement and also the process of shipping in the turbines, which was not earlier envisaged. So the question now is that how sure are you that the investors have done their foolproof plan in this introduction of the combined cycle technology, and there will be no bugs or any hitches when the process kicks off?
What we've had to face as a nation, which we need to deal with and deal with quickly, is inconsistency in government policies. Now, like I said earlier, where there is clarity of thought regarding what investors will face in an economy, where the playing field is leveled enough and not skewed to any sentimentality, you have a higher potential of investors coming into such a sector and putting in all that is required for that sector to grow. The crisis we've had in the electricity sector stems from the following. One, government, when it was managing the electricity sector, was not putting enough capital required in that sector. The capital required for electricity is not one-off. It must be sustained. It's something that is ongoing. It's not that you do back of the envelope budgeting and expect that it's going to work. No, there's no magic bullet like that. The magic bullet is that there must be consistent, regular injection of capital in the sector.
When you talk of lack of funding from the government, 2.7 trillion naira was spent in the last 16 years. Isn't that sufficient enough?
Well, what I would love always to see when I hear figures and numbers being thrown out is to see what precisely those figures were meant to provide. When I see that, it's easier for me to now deal with for the purpose of evaluation. But I give you this simple analogy. The universal principle of generation of electricity, generation side, please underline generation, it's $1 million per megawatt. Now, if peradventure a nation is to develop its own electricity using public fund, and you are deploying, say, 500,000 to generate the same quantum of electricity, you won't get there. Now, the longer it takes you to provide that capital that is required to get 1 megawatt, the more expensive it becomes, because inflation is going to step in. Quite a number of other challenges are stepping in day by day. So part of what we've had to see in the system is when EGMI was constructed, for instance, in between 1981 and 1985, government was focused on making sure they deliver. And they were able to deliver on time because resources were provided. If that project had been delayed an extra year or more, longer, probably we'll be talking of EGMI as Ajaokuta Steel Rolling Mill, which we started as well about the same period, but we never came to concluding it.
You sound so optimistic about the readiness of the funds to get to the second phase of this installation. That's talking about the introduction of the combined cycle technology. But where will the funds be coming from?
The funds are coming from different sources. First is equity, the other is debt. Equity from the standpoint of those of us, the investors, who have that belief in the system, who loves this country and knows that there's no other nation better or bigger than Nigeria, and that this country is going to be better than any other nation in the world. We're ready to put our money where our mouth is. That is from the point of view of the investor, the equity. The debt is the side that requires that clarity in terms of government policies. That's from the banks, from other institutional investors, from venture capitalists, and all those who believe that really we've not even started developing this country.
How much will the combined cycle technology be gulping?
We're projecting between 1.5 to $2 billion.
What's your opinion on the hike in electricity tariff?
Electricity is an economic product. From an economic point of view, it invariably means that the parameters required in pricing it, they're clear. It's not alien, it's not hidden, it's not something that can be fabricated. The emotional side of electricity is what is at play. The economic side of it, the economic reality, is what everybody should address. First and foremost, the most rudimentary element for power generation from a gas perspective is the gas price itself. The gas price up until recently was $1.80. The gas price today is $3.30. Invariably, there has been a significant lift in gas pricing. So naturally, once the rudiment moves the way it has moved, what is expected of the system? That's the first plank. The second side to it is the cost of doing business generally has gone up. Cost of products and services are increasing by the day. The foreign exchange component of our business is high. It's not anything little, it's quite significant. You find that all the spares, the critical spares, being utilized to generate electricity are imported. So invariably, if at the point of acquisition of this asset, the exchange rate was 157, and today, even using the official exchange rate is 199, and you and I know that that is not readily available, that if you go to the open market to assess the same dollar, you're talking of about 400 approximately. That huge fluctuation will be borne by somebody. It has to be fed into the price.
You can also join in this conversation by sending your comments on our various social media platforms. They are showing on your screen. Coming up on Question Time. Why is the power purchase agreement signed between power firms and the federal government yet to be activated? Let's hear from the chairman of Igbim Power Station when we return. Join us again.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, our guest on this episode of Question Time is the chairman of the Igbim Power Station, Mr. Kola Adeshino. Don't go away. We understand that the power purchase agreement, which was signed in November 1, 2013, has not been activated. What is responsible for this?
Yeah, that's about to be activated, I know, because there are quite a number of other conditions precedent to its activation, one of which is this tariff thing that just came out, because the PPAs are all predicated on the gas prices being right, the power prices being right, companies posting their LCs and bank guarantees and the rest of them. So I'm sure we're coming round sorting out all the problems regarding the PPA. So that is not a problem now anymore.
Are you still being owed any debt by the federal government? Because we understand there was a time there was a publication of about 39 billion naira being owed by the federal government from Igbim Power Station.
Yes, we're still being owed by the bulk trader, the market operator, about 45 billion naira as we speak. But I know that government has begun paying down, because we recently received about 6.7 billion of what we're being owed, and we equally know that there's ongoing effort to quickly pay off the difference.
Did your company access any part of the 213 billion naira soft loans advanced to power firms?
It means role there is not a loan. It's not a loan that was to be made available to EGMI. It's actually payment for services rendered. It's payment for electricity we are giving the system. This so-called 45 billion I just spoke of, that's a component of it anyway. We're meant to get 21 billion out of the 230 in intervention fund. We got 5.1. We're hoping any moment from now we should get 16 billion balance for what was owed previously up to 2013-14. So we are a part of it, and we are hoping to get paid.
So what's the possibility of the October deadline, talking about the federal government's aggressive metering campaign? Is that feasible?
No, the federal government did not say that by October everybody should be metered. It's absolutely impossible and equally inconceivable for such a program to be expected to happen. It's not going to happen in that rapid fashion. You're talking of about, for Ikeja, for instance, about 341,000 meters. You cannot do that in the next 9 months. It's absolutely impossible.
Based on the aggressive metering campaign, does that suggest that there's a yawning gap between the power operators and that of the federal government?
Well, you see, your question is suggestive of the fact that there is a conflict. I can tell you that there is no conflict whatsoever. What the government needs to do from a regulatory perspective is to ensure that, one, there is standardization on the system. Two, that the enablers are made available, the tariff structure is right. Three, to supervise and ensure that those things we are committed to doing, we're doing them, and to be able to appropriately put in place mechanisms to make sure that things that are done wrongly are put right. All that the federal government is doing. In terms of metering, like I said to you, without the resources, metering would not happen. I hate to call a spade any other name. I call a spade a spade. The commitment of the sector is predicated on the pricing being right. Now that we've gotten over that, and once we get through this hula baloo of controversies and negative publicity around it, it is high time we start to now put us on the back burner that yes, you have gotten your tariff, a 10-year tariff, and you must make good your promises. So that's what I really would want to see. I want to start to engage my time on ensuring that we deliver on our promises rather than deploying my energy on trying to defend policies that are absolutely global in nature in order to support an infrastructure similar to electricity.
Isn't it arbitrary to announce a power hike in electricity tariff before getting the metering system right?
It's an imperative to us, even as a company. Quite honestly, at Ikeja, what we did is what we call the SETAM project, which is the customer enumeration, asset mapping, and then for us to be able to do technical service audit of our system. Without you metering helps the operator more than even the consumer. Because where we have losses starts from where you cannot account precisely for energy you've dispatched to the system. You need to be able to account that, look, the people in Ikorodu, they were given 3 megawatts. Were they truly given 3 megawatts? You want to be able to know from their homes that 3 megawatts actually entered their homes. Your metering infrastructure will enable you to do that.
Before we wind down this conversation, we would like you to comment on the recent attacks on gas installations. Would that not affect the deliverables in terms of the deadline you've set in providing over 4,000 megawatts to Nigerians before the end of 4 years?
Where you find any citizen deliberately vandalizing equipment that is beneficial to all and disruptive, somebody disrupting that, there is a crisis. That's the first thing really we need to address as a nation. The value system of this country must be one that must promote Nigerianness, that there is something that is beneficial to everybody. All of us must protect that thing. Electricity being one of them. Gas infrastructure going forward, some of the things I know those of us in the sector are putting forward are programs that will further protect those infrastructure from vandalism.
Mr. Kola Adesina, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Question Time, and also for making our time to share so much insights into the workings of the power sector in this country. We wish you the very best of luck. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
And that's as much as we can take on this episode of Question Time. You may also send us your comments on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Join us next week for another exciting episode of the show on Channels Television. Many thanks for watching. I'm Benga Ashiru saying goodbye.